Hey, it's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. So the other day I posted a video about Bruce Lee. I've posted quite a few actually. About breaking down, dispelling myths about Bruce Lee. Because one thing I hate is myths about a man that I admire. And a lot of people like to say, oh, Ramsey, you're a Bruce Lee hater. No, my friends, I'm a hater of misinformation about a man that I admire greatly. Bruce Lee was a pursuer of the truth, as am I. He wanted to express himself honestly. He didn't want a bunch of nerds on the internet to say, oh yeah, Bruce Lee could sidekick 50,000 people into the moon in half a second. Or some equivalent nonsense. But that's not why we're here today. I expected that kind of backlash from those videos, and yeah, I got it. I've been excommunicated from the Church of Jeet Kune Do a long time ago. The cult of Bruce Lee hates me. Not people who actually admire Bruce Lee, but people who have set him up on a pedestal as a demigod. We're not here today to address them. Instead, in this video, where I said Bruce Lee was an American. He was born in America. He was an American citizen. He was a proud American. And if Bruce Lee is not an American, then I'm not an American. The only reason I'm a U.S. citizen is because I was born there. I was born, just like Bruce Lee, to parents who were not Americans. To immigrants, not immigrants, understand the difference. Immigrants are people who move to a new place with the intention of being there permanently, for example, seeking citizenship. Whereas immigrants are people who simply go to a new place. So my mother emigrated to the United States. She was a citizen of a foreign country when I was born in the U.S., therefore granted United States citizenship. The U.S. is one of the few countries in the world that does that. Most countries don't. For example, in China, you don't get gifted Chinese citizenship simply by being born here. You have to have Chinese parents. My children, born and raised in China, not Chinese citizens. They're American citizens because I am. Okay. Now, the comments I want to address today are ones that deeply disturb me, and they're not so much about Bruce Lee as they are about the current socio-political climate in the United States right now. Yeah, we're going to address that today. A bunch of people have asked me, Ramsey, what do you think about what's happening in the United States right now? And I gave somewhat of a dismissive answer, which is I don't know because I'm not there, and I'll stand by that. That is true, I'm not there. I don't know what's going on. I've seen what the news media has shown me. And there are a lot of different ways to interpret that. Because news media is generally owned by partisan, interested parties who want to sell you on a very specific agenda. I did see a video. I believe it was from CNN. And I'm going to bring this up because of the specific language that they used. Where there was a reporter covering some riots or protests. There were a bunch of riot police out there. And the reporter was 100% cooperative with the police. He said, I will get out of your way, just tell me what to do. We will go there, we will do it. We are cooperating 100%. And then, without any provocation whatsoever, the police arrested this man. And he asked, why am I being arrested? No answer. Completely compliant, no resistance whatsoever. They took him away. The news reporters who had not been arrested said a few words, and one man on the other end at the TV station said, I have never seen this before. This is the language that I'm so interested in. I've never seen this before. An American television reporter arrested live on national TV in the United States. An American television reporter. why that language is so important. This particular man who was arrested was a black man. And at this time, in the United States, there are a lot of people in the black community which are very upset by the current socio-political climate, and that is 100% understandable. It's been a very long-standing tradition of abuse and, just some crap happening to human beings who don't deserve it. Okay. That being said, and unfortunately I feel I have to tread lightly how I say this, but right now, when a black man on television experiences injustice, the first thing we hear about is that it is a black man receiving injustice. And so it shocked me quite a bit that on the other end of the news station, this man at the TV studio, instead of saying an African American man is being victimized by the police, he said, an American news reporter, this is the first time I have ever seen an American news reporter arrested on live television by the police in the United States. And the use of that language was beautiful to me. Not what happened to that man, but the use of the language to describe it. An American news reporter. Why do we feel the need to say African American or Asian American or anything plus American if we are Americans? Why do we have to use that divisive language? The implication to me, what that sounds like to me, is that there is a standard American which is white, because we don't say white American, we don't say European American. If you're a white American, they generally just say, hey, look, it's an American. But if you're an American of color, for some reason, the politically correct thing has been to address what that color is, to set that apart from the norm, to say that's not normal, that's not a normal American, that's not an everyday run-of-the-mill American, that's a different type of American. And that's a problem. Here's what that has to do with that Bruce Lee video. So when I said Bruce Lee was an American, I got a couple dozen angry comments about that from people telling me that no, Bruce Lee was not an American in spite of the fact that he was born in San Francisco. In spite of the fact that he moved back to the United States at the age of 18 to claim his birthright citizenship, in spite of the fact that he was a proud citizen of the United States of America. In spite of that, the fact that he was a pursuer of the American dream. You ever seen that movie Dragon, a Bruce Lee story? Yeah, a lot of it's embellished. For example, the fight with Wong Jack Man is just like totally over the top, and a lot of the events portrayed in there never happened. But one thing in that movie that is very correct, there's a scene where Bruce Lee is having a conversation, and he's speaking to some white people, some white Americans. And he mentions, I'm an American. And they say something along the lines of, oh, not really, not a real American. Because he's not white and he has an accent. And he lived abroad and his parents were from somewhere else. And when I saw that that movie, that part of the movie, more than any fight scene in that movie, that one really resonated with me. Man, just that one little clip, man, I would give that my personal Oscar for the actor's rendition of how hurt he looked at that line, like, you're not a real American. Why? Because I remember feeling like that as a child, growing up in this small town where I was told, because of the way that I spoke, go back to your own country. Go back to your own country. Why do you talk funny, kid? You're not one of us. In the absence of different colors, and I grew up in a small town where most folks were white. In the absence of different colors, children will fixate on other differences. One of the main ones being how you talk. And if your native dialect is not an American dialect, but say a Northern English dialect like Geordie or something like that, you know, that's the part of England where you need subtitles to understand what's being said if you're not from there. And if you're saying words that don't make sense to the American mind, you're the other. And children are blunt, and they're often very mean and cruel about it. You're not a real American. I've heard those words. I've felt those words. And ooh, those stung. If Bruce Lee was not a real American, without any prefixes, then neither am I. There was a movie, I haven't seen it, I saw the trailer, American Wrestler. Story of Alex Dodd. Alex Dodd is now a TV producer, but as a younger man, he emigrated from somewhere in the Middle East, I don't remember where, and became a high school student in the United States, became an American citizen, and he wrestled in high school and became a state wrestling champion, something like that. And they made a movie about him, titled American Wrestler. The story about this refugee who came to America, lived the American dream, and did something really cool. And I remember reading some comments as I was, it was the trailer on YouTube, and I was reading some of the comments, and the comments said something along the lines of, really? American Wrestler? You're going to make a movie about some brown dude from the Middle East and call it American Wrestler? Why not put a real American in there? Now, I understand that a lot of countries aren't like America, like communist China is not like America. If you're not born and raised here, if you're not ethnically Chinese, if your parents aren't Chinese, then you're not Chinese. And you'll never be Chinese. You'll never be one of them. Doesn't matter how long you live here, how well you speak Mandarin. Doesn't matter. You're not one of them. But America's different. It's a different kind of country, built on different principles. Built on the principle that this, or I should say that, because I'm not there right now. I'm in China. I'm in communist China. It's a different place. But there in America is the land of freedom. A land where anyone can come and pursue the American dream. A land where anyone has the potential to come and be an American. And me, that ideal, when I say the ideal, I'm not talking about the government, I'm not talking about legislature, any of that crap. I'm talking about the American ideal. That was sacred to me. As a young man, close to, I think I was about 18 years old or so, my mother finally became an American citizen. She'd been living in the United States as a legal alien resident for quite some time. But she decided it was time, and she went and took all the tests, did all the paperwork, went through all the channels you're supposed to go through to become an American citizen. Not an easy task. And I went down to, where was it? A courthouse, government building. I don't remember where I think it was the Capitol building in Boise, Idaho, where they swore in all the American citizens. And I looked at this room filled with all of these people with hopes and dreams in their eyes. About 100 people from 100 different countries around the world. All colors, all languages, all these different national identities. And suddenly I saw something beautiful. One nation. One nation under God. Like the Pledge of Allegiance says, if you're not familiar with the American Pledge of Allegiance. Back when I was a kid, school children would put their hands over their hearts. Way back before World War II, they used to do the Bellamy salute like the Nazis, until the Nazis started doing that. They're like, oh, no, let's put that over our hearts instead. Yeah, we don't want to be associated with those guys. So no more Bellamy saluting in the U.S., but children would put their hands over their hearts, and they would say the Pledge of Allegiance. How did that go? Man, it's been so long since I've heard those words. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I remember there were a bunch of folks who hated the idea of God, and they said we should get rid of that part about one nation under God. And I don't care what you believe about God. Understand the spirit of what that means. What is a nation? It's not a country. The United States is not a nation. It's a state. It's a sovereign state. If you studied political science at all, you know a state is what we often colloquially refer to as a country. For example, Canada is a sovereign state. Mexico is a sovereign state, even though it's Los Estados Unidos de México, the United States of Mexico, more commonly known as Mexico. But that's a state. The UK, there's a state. China, that's a state. These are all states, sovereign states, right? But a nation is a people that identify with each other. Identify comes from the Latin idem, which means the same as. If I identify with you, that means I'm the same as you. You're the same as me. A while back, my gym, we became an affiliate of Hibero Jiu-Jitsu, which is really cool because I've been an admirer of Xande Hibero and Saru Hibero for a very long time. So, very proud to represent their lineage. But one of their big traditions in the Hibero Jiu-Jitsu lineage is the idea that everybody at the gym, no matter what belt color you have, everybody is the same. We identify with each other. We're on the same team. It's not this guy with the high rank is better than the guy with the low rank. It's everybody's the same. We understand. Everybody brings different strengths and weaknesses to the table, but we are there to help each other out. So it's a cool mentality, which I appreciate a lot. It's the idea that we are one nation under God. Now, before you brush that off and say, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in God, it doesn't matter. It's an expression. It's an expression. That's not from the Bible. That's a man-made expression. Okay, generally speaking, what's a nation? If you're familiar with the Native American nations, there are many of them. For example, the Iroquois Nation. Some people might call it the tribe, but there are many different Iroquois tribes that make up the Iroquois Nation. The Navajo Nation. The Nez Perce Nation. In Canada, instead of calling them Native Americans, they tend to call them First Nations. Why? Because they're a bunch of different ethnic groups that identify with each other as individual nations. At least that was the case with the indigenous peoples of North and South America, so many different nations. But the ideal of the United States is that regardless of where you come from, what your native language is, where your parents or grandparents or great-grandparents came from, what color your skin is, whatever your traditions are, that we can identify with each other as one nation under God. We're not physically the same nation. We understand, we have our own background, our own genealogical makeup, our own family history, our own traditions. We look different. We understand that. We're not physically one nation, but we're one nation under God. Figuratively, we are one nation. Now it's about time we started acting like it. So when I heard that news reporter at the CNN news station describe this black man at this time, where those words are politically charged and used to incite emotions in the public, extreme emotions, to get people polarized and angry and riled up, instead of going down that path, he called this man an American news reporter. Good for him. Because if that man who got arrested is not an American news reporter, then I'm not an American. And neither are you. Every 4 years, about this time of year, election time, the American news media chooses a few news stories to throw out there at the public to incite some public outrage, to polarize the people into groups of us and them, into groups of black and white, into groups of red and blue, left and right, when the reality is, as far as spectrums go, we're all over the place. I'd like to read just a couple of words of one of these comments I got about Bruce Lee. Speaking of going all over the place. This guy says, as you may or may not know, it's very different when your first language is English. And also, you are white, or at least white-looking. Even though you may be an immigrant or a son of immigrant parents. You may be born in America. You may be born an American. But if you don't speak like an American, or look like one, it's a very different story. Implying that because Bruce Lee did not look like an American or speak like an American, then obviously, let's take some issue with that language. Look like an American. What the heck does an American look like? When I first came to China, I worked at Shanghai Normal University. I taught some classes over there. I taught some classes in the Department of International Tourism. And I was asked to teach a class which basically turned out to be a social studies class about American culture for tourism students who wanted to work in English-speaking countries, specifically in the United States. And I made a slideshow. I made a slideshow of pictures of American faces. Americans of all different nationalities. Americans of all different, that's not the right term, nationalities, all different looks, ethnicities, ethnic backgrounds. The first picture I showed them was a woman from Alaska of Inuit heritage. And I asked my students, I didn't tell them where she was from. I said, "Where is this woman from?" And they all chimed together, "She's Chinese." Because the Inuits look very Asian. And I said, "This woman is an American." "No," they said. Next I showed them a black man from Chicago, born and raised, and asked them, "Where is this man from?" "Africa," they all called out. "I'm sorry, this man is an American." "What?" they cried. Next I showed them a picture of a young man from Pennsylvania whose grandparents had come from Nepal. I asked them, "How about this guy? What's he?" "He's Indian. He's from Pakistan. He's from," they called out a few related countries in the nearby geographic vicinity. "Nope, I'm sorry. He's an American too." What? But every time I showed them a picture of a white person, "American," they said. Yes, they were correct. The white people were also Americans. But every time there was a person of color, a person who had a different ethnic look to them, my students got very confused when they learned this was also an American without a prefix, without a necessity of an explanation. This is an American. I showed them several pictures of natives in their native dress. I showed them a Shoshone chief wearing his feathered headdress, and they were confused. What is that? What country is this man from? And they were shocked as ever before to learn this was also an American. Even more shocked to learn this was one of the original Americans. So I don't know where these folks are from who are writing these angry responses to me about how Bruce Lee was not an American because he didn't look like an American, meaning because he wasn't white. That's stupid. The United States of America has a lot of white people, sure, but you know what else it has? Everything else. And those people are citizens of the United States, and they are one nation with me, under God also. Thank you for watching. Now get out there and train.